My name is Charles Shumway. This account of my life is inspired by a family history storybook by my 5th great-granddaughter, Madeline Shumway Harmer. Rex Wayne Shumway, a great-grandson, made additions to Madeline's story text and used my Heritage Deep Story AI software to generate this video. Scott Harmer used ChatGPT AI to make the beautiful illustrations. Jacob Harmer was a contributor. I was born on August 2, 1806 to a hardworking family in Massachusetts. My parents, Parley and Polly, taught me and my 8 siblings to be faithful, obedient, and most of all to love God. When I grew up, I fell in love with a beautiful girl named Julia Ann Hooker. I am wearing my sheriff's badge in this photo of me and Julia Ann taken in Nauvoo in about 1844. I married Julia and we began to have children. I had been taught how to work with iron and wood, and this skill allowed me to make a good living building wagons, saw mills and flour mills. In 1835 we moved to Rockport, Illinois to be near my brother, Pearlie Johnson Shumway. One day in 1840, missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints visited us. They said that God had called a young man named Joseph Smith to restore Christ's church on the earth. I felt the truth of their testimony and my family was baptized by Elder Elijah Groves. When they told me that Joseph lived in Illinois, I decided to go meet him. I traveled about 200 miles south, and when I met Joseph I first felt the Spirit testifying of the truth of what the missionaries had told me. At that time I did not know Joseph Smith was my 4th cousin. Mariah Smith, a sister of Samuel Smith, Joseph's ancestor, married Peter Shumway Jr., my 2nd great-grandfather. Elder Amasa Lyman joined me on my return trip home. I was attacked and badly beaten up because I had joined the new religion. Remarkably, I was healed when Elder Lyman administered to me. We loaded all our belongings on a raft and floated to Nauvoo. I joined many other saints in their efforts to build up Zion. I worked hard to build homes for other families and sawmills to help with construction. I also helped build the house of the Lord, the Nauvoo Temple. Besides my construction jobs, I worked as a policeman in Nauvoo. Joseph Smith often asked me to be his bodyguard when he needed to go somewhere dangerous. One time there was a group of angry, armed men insulting and slandering the saints. After hearing all the mean things the mob was saying, I walked up to the leader, grabbed him by the nose, and told him to stop. Joseph called me to go on a short mission to my friends in northern Illinois, a mission to the Cherokee Nation with Phineas Young, Brigham's brother, and a mission to Massachusetts with Daniel Spencer. Joseph was continuously charged with various offenses. In June 1844, Illinois Governor Ford promised protection for Joseph if he would turn himself into the Carthage jail during trial. Joseph agreed, but an angry mob broke into the jail and killed Joseph and his brother Hiram Smith. I was devastated and soon began to fear for my family's safety. With the prophet gone, Nauvoo became increasingly dangerous for the saints. Mobs of angry people would burn buildings and hurt anyone who tried to stop them. Eventually they even burned down the temple. The Lord chose a new prophet, Brigham Young, to help his people find a safe place to live. First we finished building the temple so we could have a sacred place to make endowment covenants with God before heading west to the Salt Lake Valley. In August 1845 I married a second wife. Her name is Louisa Minnerly. This photo shows us in a curl of our hair. Mob leaders were pressing Brigham Young to leave town. I was called to lead the first group of 50 saints on their journey west. Therefore I began constructing wagons in my backyard. Before leaving we received our temple endowments. On February 4, 1846 we headed west by using barges to cross the Mississippi River. The soggy soil in Iowa made travel very difficult. After 260 miles of hiking through icy cold snow and mud, the pioneers rested for a while at a place called Winter Quarters. We shared our supplies with others, and soon began running out of food. With my family and friends hungry, I left the company of saints and traveled ahead to a group of Pawnee Indians who were selling corn. While I was gone, Brigham Young had a dream that I was in grave danger. The prophet sent a horse and rider to tell me to leave. Even though it was the middle of the night, I immediately obeyed. I packed up everything I had and left the Indian village in the cold, dark night. When the sun began to rise, I looked back and saw thick black smoke rising up into the sky. An enemy tribe of Sioux Indians had attacked the village. Obedience saved my life. I vowed to always obey the prophet of God. I trekked across the country with the saints for almost a year and a half. Poor nutrition resulted in the deaths of Julia Ann and 2 of my children. Finally, Brigham Young asked me to travel ahead with a small group of other men to prepare the valley for their arrival. When my 14-year-old son, Andrew, found out I was going ahead, he desperately wanted to go too. After the prophet gave him permission to go, Andrew excitedly packed his things and joined the advance group of men. He marched bravely ahead with me and his dog at his side. On July 22nd, we arrived in the Salt Lake Valley. Andrew was the very first child to enter the valley. I was exhausted from the journey but knew that the prophet had given me a job to do and I was determined to do it. With obedience in my mind and the love of God in my heart, I began plowing land and planting crops like potatoes. On July 24, 1847, we welcomed Brigham Young and the other saints to the valley. A few weeks later, Brigham asked me to return to winter quarters with him to help bring their families to Salt Lake. At Rocky Ridge, Wyoming, we met Lou Wiza and my remaining children traveling with the Jedediah M. Grant Company, so I turned around and went back to the valley. It wasn't long before many other pioneers joined the saints in Utah. Brigham Young knew he needed faithful, brave, and obedient people to help develop new towns for all the incoming people. In 1849, the prophet asked me to help settle a town in Sanpete County called Manti, 120 miles to the south. Manti was supposed to be mild, but that year it snowed and snowed and snowed. My family nearly froze alongside the other saints who had moved to Manti. 3 feet of snow covered the town. Many of our animals died. We even lost some of our friends. I was sad and scared but knew I needed to act. On snowshoes, I hiked all the way back to Salt Lake City and faithfully asked the prophet for supplies. I was able to get enough food to help the people in Manti survive the rest of the winter. Using metal furnished by Brigham Young, I built the first sawmill in Sanpete County, served as first counselor to Bishop Isaac Morley, and represented the county in the Utah Territorial Legislature. In 1852 I moved to Payson and built a sawmill and a grist mill. In 1854 I moved to South Cottonwood, now Murray, where I bought a farm and a threshing machine. In November of 1856 my son Andrew was called on a mission to England. I was very proud of him. During the April 1857 General Conference I was called out of the audience to serve a mission to Canada. On the way I went to visit my brother, Harley Johnson Shumway, who lived in Wauwatosa near Milwaukee. Most of my missionary efforts were focused on the people in the city of London, Ontario, Canada. After only a few months, Brigham Young called all missionaries home because the U.S. Army was threatening Utah. Part of the way home I was able to travel with my son Andrew, who was returning from England. Since I was financially successful and faithful, the prophet asked me to marry additional women and to help develop many other settlements. I married Henrietta Bird in 1851. I married Adeliza Larita Truman in 1856. We were divorced after 2 years. In 1861 I married Elizabeth Jardine. We had a total of 39 children. Unfortunately, I did not get to know all of them because some died as babies. I was sent to Cache County in 1858 and helped develop Wellsville and Mendon. My son Andrew was called as the Bishop of Mendon. I built a sawmill and helped in the chapel construction. I also built this home next to one built by Brigham Young. One day, the prophet asked me to come to his office in Salt Lake. After I went in and sat down, Brigham Young said, "If I hadn't asked so much of you, I would request you to move to Arizona to help colonize there." Without hesitation, I answered, "If you desire that I move to Arizona, then I shall do so." I first took my families and 325 head of livestock to Kane County, Utah. Henrietta families lived in Kanab and Lou Wiza and Elizabeth's families lived in Johnson until I took them to Arizona in 1880. I built a shingle mill on the Virgin River. Here is a photo of the site of the old shingle mill. In 1879 I had the older boys take the livestock to the Lee's Ferry where they crossed the Colorado River. After crossing they followed the Little Colorado River into the White Mountains of eastern Arizona. When I came we first settled in Concho. Then I bought land and water rights in Spring Valley, which was later renamed Shumway. This photo shows Shumway today. This flour mill I built was vital to the area because shipping flour in from Albuquerque was expensive and dangerous. The wagon road passed through Indian country. This photo shows the machinery inside the mill. I am so thankful to my parents for teaching me to perform difficult construction jobs. I planted gardens and orchards, and lived in Shumway the remainder of my life. I died in May of 1898. I had served as a 70, as a member of the Council of 50, several times as a missionary, in a bishopric, as a state legislator, a stake high councilman, and shortly before I died I was ordained a patriarch. Serving God brought me much happiness. When talking about me, Brigham Young once said, "There was never a more faithful man in the church. He was a man who was not wed to his gold. He would give everything he had to the church, to the building of the kingdom of God." Concerning my wealth, I did not want to make the same mistake the rich young ruler made. I want my descendants to know that I do have a testimony that Jesus Christ was the promised Messiah. Goodbye until we meet again.